Hello and welcome to another episode of the Basement Files. I'm Ginger, and I'm super happy to have you here with me today for this shorter than usual episode as I introduce you to a brand new case that began at the beginning of this month. So the details are coming out. We're not there yet as to exactly what's going on, but I will be doing bonus episodes to update you on the status of this case as those details come out. So, what I wanted to do was introduce you to it because I have a feeling that something's really going to come out of this. It's a gut feeling. And I've done some digging, so I have some theories and other thoughts that I want to share with you. And if you are a sleuth, I say go for it. Take a look at this case, see what you think. It's a bit wild what we know so far. So, early this month, the Southern Ohio Organized and Major Crimes Task Force, which is led by the Scioto County Sheriff's Office, began an investigation into a site on Pine Creek Road near South Webster in Scioto County, Ohio. Because of the location of this, I'm calling it the Pine Creek Road Mystery, because who knows what's going on there. But the reason why they started investigating was because they received a tip about that being the possible location of human remains linked to missing persons cases. And the tip is believed to have come from someone, and I know this is a really weird way to put this, but someone with secondhand knowledge who knows about someone with firsthand knowledge. That basically says that the information is a bit indirect, but it apparently has enough credibility for multiple law enforcement agencies to get involved. So this investigation, which started on April the 2nd, focused on a well in a wooded area there on Pine Creek Road. And I'm talking very wooded, very wooded area. And they believe that it is connected to the disappearance of 3 individuals that were reported missing from multiple counties, with some cases dating back to over 40 years. So it's possible that these cases are from the early 80s or maybe even the late 70s. So as of right now, it has not been released as to who these individuals are or could be. There aren't really any prominent Scioto County missing person cases except one that I found, Lori Ann Blevins. She went missing January 1st, 1984, at just 16 years old. There's no information on where she was last seen, and it's possible that none of the 3 people in question are her or even from Scioto County. They just said different counties. The statement from law enforcement regarding the cold cases, the missing persons cases, suggested that the individuals in questions are from Ohio only. And the reason why I say that, they didn't say that. I'm saying that because this area, Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, all meets. It's a tri-state area. If they were from more than one state, I believe they would say they're from multiple states, but they said 3 counties. So that's suggesting to me that it's Ohio only. We just have to keep in mind, though, and this is something that's very, very hard. Back in the 70s and 80s, the record keeping of missing persons was not what it is now. Plus, there were cases that would go underreported, especially in these rural areas. And I'm assuming the tipster might have given names, and that's how law enforcement knows that these individuals are from 3 different counties. But again, I did some digging. I looked at the Ohio Attorney General's database of missing adults, and there were quite a few from 1977 to 1984. And being that the Columbus Police Department is actually involved in this case. Now, Columbus is maybe almost 2 hours away from this area. So what are they doing here? I mean, I'm 45 minutes away from it, but it's still here to me because I pass through that area often. But what are they doing? Like, why are they coming down from so far away? That's telling me that one of these missing persons, or at least one of them, may have something to do with Columbus. So I took a look at missing persons cases in the Columbus area in that time frame, and I found a couple. I found John Allen Hale, who went missing on November 26, 1979, from Morse Road in Columbus. And I found DeJuan Cox. He was last seen in Columbus November 21st, 1979. His car was found in Logan, Ohio. I also found a case. Now, this one really interested me. And I also saw her name mentioned on social media when talking about the possible remains at this well. And her name is Joanna Jenkins. She has been missing since November 1st, 1977. She was last seen at the Bridge Inn in Jackson County, Ohio. And although this site being searched is in Scioto County, it is actually not too far away from where Joanna Jenkins went missing. And I'm going to touch on that here in just a minute, but I want to talk about the other cases that I kind of looked at on the Ohio Attorney General's office website. I looked at Cincinnati as well because although this area is closer to Columbus, it tends to be associated with Cincinnati, but I guess because it's a straight shot from there to Cincinnati, but it's a straight shot to Columbus too. So I don't know why sometimes when talking about that area, you'll see Cincinnati. That's the location in a news article. Beats me. But anyway, I went ahead and looked at Cincinnati cases. And one I found was, and I'm going to mispronounce this name, but it's John Paul Koziatic? I don't know. But anyway, he was last seen on July 30th, 1979 on the 400 block of Dixmuth Road in Cincinnati. He was a student at the University of Cincinnati at the time. And then there was Leah Allen, who went missing on November 2nd, 1981 in Cincinnati. No location as to where she was last seen was specified. And I even took a look at known serial killers in Ohio. And during that time, of course, and I covered him a couple episodes ago, Herbert Baumeister. He was connected to Medina, Ohio, and there was a missing person, James Wing, that went missing in 1983 in that area, and he's never been found. If you listen to my Baumeister episode, you know that 10,000 remains were found on his property in Indiana. And he was from the Indianapolis area, but he was known as the possible I-70 strangler. But he had a tendency to dispose of bodies in ditches. But then again, they may have been on his property since they found 10,000 human remains. So poor James Wing, he has not been found. And he kind of meets it was males that Baumeister went for, and he kind of meets the physical description in a way, I guess. But who knows? They're still identifying the remains on the Baumeister property after all of these years. The last set they identified in January of this year. So I don't think Baumeister, though, would travel all the way to Scioto County, Ohio, especially since James Wing's boat was found abandoned on Lake Erie. That's not a Baumeister thing. So I kind of had to rule him out. So I also took a look at the Ohio prostitute killer because the timeline works. He killed women, mainly prostitutes, across Ohio from 1981 to 1990. And just to give you an idea of the geographics here, Lawrence County, Ohio is that southern tip of the state of Ohio. If you're not from here, look at a map. If you can already imagine it in your head, and that little tiny piece that protrudes down into West Virginia and Kentucky, that is Lawrence County. Well, if you head northwest, more west really, you will run into Scioto County. And then when you turn a little more north, you're in Pike County. And US 52 runs through Lawrence County into Scioto County past the city of Portsmouth, Ohio. And it's right past Portsmouth in what's called the Lucasville area, Lucasville, Ohio, where it switches to US 23. So with that, truck stops haven't been a huge thing along 52 or 23. However, when I was a kid, there was a truck stop in Lawrence County in the village of Colgrove called the US 52 truck stop. And it wasn't a big one or anything like that, but it doesn't mean that someone couldn't have been picked up there. There are also stations in Portsmouth, which again, where 52 and 23 in that area where they switch off. There are stations there where truckers will stop. It's plausible that individuals could have been picked up there as well. So it's hard to tell, because just because victims haven't been documented from Lawrence County or Scioto County doesn't mean that it didn't happen. And this person's never been caught for them to even know that this Ohio prostitute killer was also known as Dr. No, and the bodies of all of his known victims have been found. Law enforcement does recognize, however, that there might be more that were never found. So I actually would not rule out Dr. No. His victims were typically left along highways, ditches, or near truck stops. He didn't travel deep into the woods. So who knows? But maybe he changed his mind. It's hard to tell. But going back to more geographics for you here. Pine Creek Road. It connects to State Route 140. It's like a country highway. And then State Route 140 meets US 23. So there's connections here. So who knows? He might have decided, hey, I'm going to turn up 140 here and find a spot, and it turned out to be Pine Creek Road. We can always theorize. But going back to the missing person from Oak Hill, Joanna Jenkins. That State Route 140 that I just mentioned ends at State Route 93 going toward Lawrence County, the northern part of Lawrence County, and at the northern part of Lawrence County is Jackson County, Ohio. And guess what's in Jackson County? That would be Oak Hill, Ohio, where Joanna Jenkins went missing. And the Pine Creek Road area is very close to this area. But again, it's just me speculating. I wish that they were able to find her. I wish that maybe she is still alive somewhere. But if she's not, that maybe her family can at some point get closure, because her name is still a name frequently put out there when it comes to missing person cases. But going back to my Dr. No theory as to why it could be plausible, number one, the timeline overlaps with the 40-plus year timeline authorities are saying. Number two, Pine Creek Road is about 6 to 10 miles away from US 23, which is a major Scioto County highway, as we mentioned before, with the truck stops or large gas stations in Portsmouth. And there was also an old rest area in Lucasville, which is right there where US 52 and 23 kind of change off, depending on how you look at it, because there's 823 that actually ties 52 and 23 together. It's a bypass around Portsmouth so that you don't have to go around Portsmouth. But this old rest area that I'm glad they knocked down and replaced with a really nice one, it was practically holes in the ground with toilet seats. It was gross. You had to hold your breath while you went to the bathroom. When I was in high school, I was in the band, I was a majorette, and we would stop there because before that bypass was built, it took forever to get through Portsmouth to hit 23 to go where you were going up north, whether it was a football game or a band competition. And that was our stop, because we weren't going to stop again until we got to Circleville, Ohio, which is not far south from Columbus. But I don't know, the place just grossed me out. And if I didn't have to go, I would not go there. But there were times that you just kind of had to. And I don't know, if you couldn't hold your breath like a swimmer, then you'd gag. But anyway, I don't see that as a place where anybody would really like to hang out. So I would actually check that off my list of places where a serial killer would want to pick somebody up. But then again, serial killers are crazy. So I don't know. Maybe. But anyway, with no information on the possible 3 victims' age or gender, it is hard to tie them to Dr. No. If forensic testing reveals that they're female with signs of strangulation or beating, that's actually consistent with Dr. No's methods. Then that means the connection becomes even stronger. So that kind of would back up this theory. If the victims are male, it would connect them to another killer. But there was a bullet found at the well as well, and that is not Dr. No's method. His was strangulation and beating. So whatever the bullet testing brings up, we'll find out. And really, it's the only item of interest outside of possible remains that have been mentioned in this case. And again, that's not how Dr. No worked. And a fourth point here is that Dr. No also disposed of bodies in semi public locations, so we do have that working against this theory. However, if Dr. No needed to travel 140 from US 23 for any reason, perhaps Pine Creek Road would be a location to dispose of bodies. Anyway, key details: the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, they are testing the items found at the well to confirm the presence of human remains and to identify any DNA or forensic evidence. And what I find very interesting is how many agencies are involved in this effort. Some of them I question. If they're not involved in some way, why are they there? For instance, the Columbus Police Department. Why are they so far south unless missing people belong to them? So the agencies that are involved include the Scioto County Sheriff's Office, which makes sense because that's their jurisdiction. Pike County Sheriff's Office, they are the county right next door. Lawrence County Sheriff's Office, even though Lawrence County borders Scioto County, the Sheriff's Office is a bit of a way away. So we're kind of questioning, why is Lawrence County there unless there is a mutual aid agreement? That could be possible. The Portsmouth Police Department makes sense because Portsmouth is it's the main city there in Scioto County. The New Boston Police, that is a smaller town right next to Portsmouth. And then we've got the Columbus Police Department. Why were they there? You have the Ohio Attorney General's office, Wayne National Forest officers. That makes sense because that area is very close to the Wayne National Forest area, if not in it. The Southern Ohio Correctional Facility Special Response Team, that might make a little bit of sense because the prison is right there in the Lucasville area. The Scioto County Engineer's Office, I'd say that they are helping with the excavation of the site. And then there's the Bloom Township Fire and EMS. Makes a lot of sense. Investigation status, again, search began April 2nd, but it did have to be paused due to severe weather, so it didn't resume until April the 14th, and therefore it remains ongoing. The authorities are following leads to determine the identity of the remains and the circumstances of their disappearances. So again, they know who these people are. The tipster had to have given names for them to know exactly who they're looking for. The sheriff, he described this as an all-hands-on-deck effort, and looking at that list of responding agencies, he's not kidding. The cases, since they span multiple jurisdictions, that indicates a complex investigation. But again, the key word there, spans multiple jurisdictions. That explains why Columbus is here. Or I'm 45 minutes away from it, but I travel through that area a lot, so it's still here to me. But the Pine Creek Road area, very heavily wooded. That makes it a very challenging site for excavation. And the tip that prompted the search was deemed reliable by authorities for them to put this much effort into it. And I mean, it's led to a very significant resource allocation to figure out what's going on here, what's there, get it tested, so on and so forth. And that recovery, the bullet recovery, suggests that foul play is a thing here. And the investigation is being treated as a potential homicide case, though there's no official determination that has been made because of the forensic results not being back yet. But the Ohio BCI being involved and multiple law enforcement agencies, that underscores the importance and the potential to resolve some kind of long-standing mystery. Now, of course, I start to dig, and I get into these very far-fetched theories, but I mean, this may be a little interesting to you, but Pine Creek runs along Pine Creek Road, but it also runs through both Scioto County and Lawrence County until it empties into the Ohio River. Around 15 miles away from the well, not far from Pine Creek, is a place called Saladay Cemetery. Saladay Cemetery. I saw this on Facebook just today, that a man named Samuel Saladay died in the fall of 1815 from consumption, tuberculosis. It would same thing, consumption slash tuberculosis, and he was buried at the Saladay family burial ground. Months after his burial, though, he was exhumed, and his liver, heart, and lungs had to be removed. His organs were thrown into a fire, hoping to keep the disease at bay. However, that was associated with the New England vampire panic. That's where that came from. And you're probably thinking, what does this have to do with anything that you're talking about right now? It may have a little bit of something to do with it. But the belief back then was that those dying from consumption slash tuberculosis would come back and consume the lives of their surviving relatives. But burning their internal organs would stop the deceased from attacking their relatives and spreading the disease. The Saladay family, they were from Switzerland. There was a hereditary consumption issue that was developing in the family soon after they had settled in the Scioto County area. And after Samuel's death, other family members ended up manifesting symptoms and they died. When the burnings occurred, though, like Samuel's burnings of his internal organs, it happened in front of surviving family members. However, the case it also happened in front of a large number of spectators from around the neighborhood, and that included Major Amos Wheeler of nearby Wheelersburg. I'm sure you're making the correlation here between that last name and the city name, Wheelersburg. Samuel was offered up as a sacrifice to stop the possible spread of the disease, but it didn't work. Again, family members ended up dying anyway. And it continued until the only relative that was left was a man named George Saladay, and he actually lived to be an old age. So while the remains might be associated with these missing persons cases in the past 40 years or so, could it be possible that they're older? Maybe what happened here was a thing in that area, since that happened in that area or not too far away from it. And it's hard to tell since the well has been dated back. I mean, the well's been dated back to the 1950s, 1950s and 1970s at most. And it's not an above ground well, and so excavators had to be used to carry out the dig. Still, you never know. Where I used to live, up on a ridge, we found an old well that might have been from the early 1900s, and it had been covered up long before anyone in the family lived up there. And rumor had it, a family lived there, with some of them dying from the influenza of 1918. Where their remains could be, we don't know. But it looked like that well could have been theirs, which is a crazy thought. And yeah, we thought about that when we were looking down into it. Didn't see any human remains, but their remains can end up in odd places and be 100 years old. I don't know. But in my research, I came across another case. And it was the case of 34-year-old Jennifer Shepard, whose body was found floating in Pine Creek in 2013. This was the part of Pine Creek that's closer to Wheelersburg, and I believe that it's downstream from Pine Creek Road. She was last seen in Portsmouth around 10:15 p.m. on June 15th, 2013, near Murray's Pub and the Fast Stop convenience store. That kind of says Dr. No a little bit. An officer found her on June 18th when he was assisting two individuals with a broken down vehicle along US 52 and State Route 522. Now, where US 52 and State Route 522 meet, that is the Wheelersburg area. I know that interchange quite well. There was nothing that ever stated that her death was homicide, and there's actually no autopsy report that's been disclosed. There was an autopsy done, but the details aren't out there. And that was 12 years ago, not 40. But if they find the remains that could be in the well, if they find that they're not 40 plus years old, there might be something there too. And according to comments on Facebook, the Pine Creek Road area is where a lot of people have disappeared in the last 40 years. Now, I haven't dug into that quite yet because, of course, looking at the Ohio Attorney General's missing persons website, it doesn't turn up what folks are saying on social media. But again, in the 70s and 80s, missing person cases were not documented like they are now, and especially in these rural areas. So there may be some truth behind the statement that many people disappeared in that area over the last 40 years. So with that said, the current status of this case, as of April the 19th, nothing has came out since April the 19th, is the investigation continues. Authorities are awaiting the forensic testing results from BCI. The Pine Creek Road site remains an active investigation area, and the sheriff has encouraged anyone with information to contact the Southern Ohio Major Crimes Task Force at 740-716-8466. So there's my theories. There's what's going on, and I will be posting bonus episodes based on the information that comes out about this case. So if you have any ideas, drop it in the comments. If there's anything you want me to look into, or if you find something out, let us know. Until next time, be good and God bless.